Mall of America. It's home to world-class shopping, great dining, and amazing attractions and events. And these are our stories, presented by Bloomington, Minnesota Travel and Tourism.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of So Much More, a Mall of America podcast. I'm excited. First of all, I have somebody who's joined me many times before, Sarah Johnson, our Director of Marketing. Sarah, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining me. And if I end up calling her SJ, that's because I call her SJ every day. So you'll know that as well. We're excited because on today's podcast, we are going to dive into the fast-paced world of sports, esports, travel, and the ever-evolving landscape around esports specifically. Our guest is someone who's been at the center of all of it, Jason Gewirtz. Pretty close.
Not just pretty close, exact.
That's perfect. And I practiced it. Thank you, Jason. Jason is Vice President, Managing Director, and Publisher of the Sports Division at Northstar Meetings Group. Jason brings a unique perspective shaped by decades of experience in journalism and event strategy. He's the publisher of SportsTravel magazine, plays a key leadership role in premier industry events like the Teams Conference and Expo, Teams Europe, and most importantly, because we're going to talk about this today, the EsportsTravel Summit. From covering City Hall to covering Olympic bids and esport tournaments, Jason has pretty much done it all throughout his career. He also serves on the board of directors for the Sports Events and Tourism Association and continues to help define how destinations and venues attract and host major events. And that's something we know a bit about here in Bloomington and at Mall of America as well. So, Jason, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. What a treat and what a great intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Was it true?
All of that was true. Yeah,
Okay,
from the way you pronounced my name to all the actual things you said about me, all accurate.
I love it. And that's a take. Thanks for joining us. I'm kidding.
This will be great.
We're really excited to have you here. Can you share a little bit of your background, if you would, Jason, first, so we get to know you a little bit and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, would be happy to. You spelled out quite a bit of it. But my background originally was in journalism as a daily newspaper reporter and editor back when my generation and older had aspired to be newspaper editors and reporters.
Yep.
And it was terrific. I was on the news side. I always loved sports, but my background, as you mentioned, City Hall, a lot of government and politics, that kind of thing. And then one day, about 17 years ago, I came across this job posting for an editor of something called SportsTravel magazine, which I'd never heard of. But initially, I was like, sports and travel, that sounds amazing. Yeah. Need to hear more about that. And it is amazing, and I'm still here, and I've worked my way up. So, what we do at Northstar Meetings Group, our company, and our magazine, SportsTravel, all the brands that you mentioned, these conferences we run, we exist to connect event organizers in sports and now esports with destinations like Bloomington and others, large and small, around the country, to figure out where these events go. I think, as a sports fan growing up, you put on the Final Four, the Super Bowl, and you never really think about, well, why is this event in Minneapolis or San Antonio or Los Angeles? Yep. Well, there are 20, 30, 40 cities that we're probably bidding for the rights to host that event. And that's the universe that we cover in our magazine that we write about on a daily basis in SportsTravel, and that we connect in person at these conferences and events. You mentioned our Teams Conference. That's for traditional sports, and our EsportsTravel Summit, which we're bringing here to Bloomington this week, which was an offshoot of that. So it's a fascinating world. It's an incredible world. It unifies this world of sporting events and the travel industry that, of course, wants to attract these events, not just for people coming, but to spend some money, to shop in the mall, to spend a night in the hotel, eat at your restaurants. It's enormous economic impact. And that's the case both in traditional sports and now on an increasing basis in esports as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been excited. We've had a few big events here in the Twin Cities, and Bloomington and Mall of America always play a huge role in that. We have a unique area in that we work closely with Explore Minnesota and Meet Minneapolis and St. Paul, right? We have this really nice group of communities that work together, but we've had the Super Bowl and we've had the Final Four and the Women's Final Four and a bunch of really fun events. And now we have your summit, which is here this weekend. Tell us a little bit about your summit and why you chose to bring it to Bloomington and what role the mall played in that as well, if you would.
Yeah, well, sure. And Dan, you brought up a good point. Even when these major events like the Super Bowl come to Minneapolis, as we know, the spillover into other communities is enormous. So we preach that a lot, that these major events that come to the United States in particular, even though they might be in one city, there are other cities that can benefit from it as well. And so obviously we're talking about esports. We have this event that we're bringing here to Bloomington called the EsportsTravel Summit. We have worked very closely over the years with Bloomington, Minnesota Travel and Tourism and all of its different names and monikers over the years. But Bonnie Carlson and the whole team there, have been they're rare. They have such a stable leadership group that's been around for a long time, and we've drafted off that as well. We did an event here years ago when we used to have a different event for the meetings market right when the JW had opened. So we were one of the first events here. So we have a long relationship with Bloomington and the team there. We work closely with Dan O'Neill and Todd Lurkey and the people involved in bringing sports events here. And one of the reasons that we brought our EsportsTravel Summit here this week to Bloomington is because this city is one of the best examples we can think of a city that leans into the assets that it has to bring events. So if you know anything or if you have a vision of esports in your head, it might be an NBA arena with big lights and high production. Sure. And it's that for sure for those cities that have that. But then it's in markets like Bloomington where you have this incredible facility here in the Mall of America. You've got hotels that have meeting space. And in esports, that's really all you need. And so that's some of the story that we're telling at our event, which is bringing representatives from destinations all across the country that are coming here to Bloomington this week to meet organizers of in-person esports events. And not all of them are doing this high production, professional grade events. We have those people here too. But the vast majority of the groups that are here are looking for destinations like this, for venues like the Mall of America, that has found a way to activate esports and gaming. I have a 15-year-old son, so I live gaming every single day of the year through him. So I know this is real. Yep. Him and his friends, video games are their lives. And there are competitions. You may not be skilled enough to win one of those competitions, but now that industry is in a place where you can travel and go to one of these competitions and make a weekend out of it and just watch the best people in the world play whatever the game is that you're interested in.
And what's amazing, I saw on your website too, a fact that said the esports industry is forecast to grow from $3 billion this year to $10 billion over the next 10 years. That's incredible.
Yeah, such a big jump.
It is incredible. I mean, we know that people can play games at home, of course, on their couch. It's online, and it's an experience. Where we focus on is this in-person experience where these games are becoming competitions. Our EsportsTravel Summit that we're talking about was an offshoot of a larger conference we do in the traditional sports space called the Teams Conference. That event's been around 25 years. But about 10 years ago, we started seeing these esports competitions in convention centers and hotel ballrooms in malls. And when you watch those fans come, it's no different than a hockey game or a basketball game. I mean, these are fans who know the players, who are having a great experience, who are having a moment, in a venue somewhere. And to us, there wasn't any debate over is this sports, is it not sports? Yep. This is sports.
Oh, yeah.
You may be exercising your mind or your fingers in a different way than you would if you were playing basketball or football, but it's absolutely no different. And when you look at the events and the stuff that's even happened here in Bloomington, these sorts of events and conventions and festivals, there's absolutely no difference between this and a traditional sporting event. And people travel to it.
Yeah.
I love it. And we've seen that here at Mall of America. We've seen a lot of fans. SJ, we've done a few events over the years here at Mall of America. Do you want to share a few of those that we've worked on? Some are esports, some are kind of aligned with
Oh my
esports.
gosh. I feel like we've done so many, but do you mind if I go back and ask a question before we dive into some of the marketing pieces?
Yeah.
But from an audience standpoint, I'm just so curious, what is that demographic that comes out and visits these tournaments? Because I feel like I always think younger, skewing that millennial and that Gen Z, but I'm sure it's vast in all the individuals who come out.
Yeah, for sure. It's younger, as you would imagine, but it would surprise you. It would surprise you the breadth of this audience, and particularly as kids start aging. And, I've at least grew up in an environment where we had Atari, we had games, we had some semblance of this. It wasn't nearly as sophisticated as it is now.
Yeah.
But as that generation gets older, they're not going away. They're still interested in their games. They still want to travel. Yeah, my son and I, and we're going to talk about it at our event this week, we were in Fort Worth, Texas last year for the Rocket League World Championships.
Yes.
If you've ever seen Rocket League, it's amazing. It's soccer, but instead of people kicking the ball, you're cars and you're driving and you're pushing the ball.
And that's been around for a while, right? Now too?
Yeah, for a long time. We went to the World Championships over a weekend just as father and son. I mean, I was interested for my job, but my son's really into it. And when you look around the audience there, it was not just 15-year-old kids. It was dads. It was groups of dads without their kids. It was it was women. It was more diverse than you would imagine it to be if you had a vision in your head of what that crowd would be like. Even for me, it was surprising looking around the room, realizing that I wasn't the oldest person in the room.
Yeah. Which I feel like dovetails a little bit into the conversation. I'm sorry, Dan, that I backtracked a little bit. I was so curious as you were listing off some of these, and I was thinking through the audiences that we've had on our property. And to your point, it spans generations. And I love the connection to, as you mentioned, from the father to son, but I mean all families and individuals too, which is so fun. And I think as marketers, we forget or don't realize the impact and opportunity in a space like e-gaming or sports. And I don't think many of us actually think through how we can capitalize or get involved.
Yeah, it's no different than what we see in traditional sports. You have a great experience, you travel somewhere for an event, and if that city, that destination, that venue leaves an impression, you're going to want to come back, or you're going to want to tell your friends and family, hey, I was in Bloomington, I was in Fort Worth, whatever the city is. And if it's done correctly and it's done well, and it often is, this is an incredible opportunity for storytelling in a destination. Happens to be around a sporting event.
I love that. And I love the intergenerational aspect because I kind of had your mindset, which was it was young males primarily, right? But I love the fact that there's a number of different generations there. And that's going to throw me off script for a minute. Yeah. I'm going to ask you, what was the first game that you ever played, electronic game? I'm going to ask both of you this because I remember mine. Yeah. Do you remember your first one you ever played?
Yeah, probably the first one I ever played was a handheld Coleco football game. And when I say football, I'm talking dots and dashes and sound. And you can put it in your hand. My older brother had it. Technically, it was his, but I would borrow it quite a bit. Yeah. And then, as I mentioned, we were fortunate enough to have an Atari 2600 growing up, which was sort of the console of a generation. And so, our home experience, my brothers and I, was pretty much locked into that machine for a good number of years.
Good. SJ.
Nintendo. I feel like I remember growing up and watching, and we had it as a whole family. So there'd be routine where we would have dinner, and then you would go play games. And I feel like Mario Kart was the biggest. I feel like it was every single night. It was so fun, and it was such an engaging opportunity. But I almost, until this moment, kind of forgot about those moments, but how wonderful it was to do it as a family, and how I even right now reflecting back,
and
it's such
everything
joy.
comes around. Mario Kart, they just unveiled the newest one just last week, and we're going to be offering a competition tonight at the Mall of America for our opening celebration to get our attendees playing that game, and whoever wins is also going to get some nice prizes from Bloomington.
Yeah.
So everything comes around, everything gets reborn and rethought and reimagined.
Yep.
And you mentioned Mario Kart, and we played it as well. And now you've got the newest, most amazing version of that, where if you're 12 or 13-year-old brain would have seen the original one and seen what it looks like now, you'd have a hard time processing, how advanced that's become. I tell my son that all the time, that the games you're playing are so good. If I were you, it would be so hard to do anything else but sit in front of the TV and play this game, because the graphics are amazing. The games are incredible. It's exciting.
So deep. My very first one was called Pong. And we had a black and white TV. We didn't even have color TV. That's how old I am, everybody. And it was a little console with two little knobs. If you remember the very first version of Pong.
I failed to mention, but as a birthday gift, I think 6 years old, it wasn't quite Pong. It was so sad. It was like an offshoot of Pong that we had for our television. Same concept.
So you had the generic version.
So I'm admitting that publicly.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'll tell you that my brother and I sat there for hours, and we thought, it was two little rectangles going up and down, hitting a little square that went back and forth.
I tell my son this all the time. I'm like, let me explain the games I played. You were a perpendicular sign, and there was a dot, and we would do that for hours, whatever the game was, or all that.
Yes. And it was amazing, right? And you talk about now what your son is playing and what the current generation is playing with. What's it going to be in 10 years? Where does your industry, the esports industry, go over the next 10 years? And what do you think it's going to look like? And from an expert, I love that. But from a marketer's perspective, too, where do we think we're going to hit people?
Yeah, we're hitting on these themes at our event this week. So our conference that we're bringing here to Bloomington, sort of twofold, well, really threefold. One, it's networking, get a chance to get everyone in the room and meet each other and talk with each other. We have a marketplace, which is just pure business development. These are esports event organizers sitting across the table from a city, each making the case as to why that event should be in their city. And then we have quite a bit of education, as you can imagine. And in that education, we're looking forward-looking. We're looking at the groups that are doing stuff now. What are they going to be doing down the road? We've got the Mayo Clinic coming up from down the road here in Rochester coming. They have an esports division, and they're working with these players to promote health and wellness. And they're working with event organizers to have safety plans in place at their events. Things you wouldn't necessarily think of that are part of this industry that are here in Minnesota, taking advantage of that as well. And that's an organization, that is also looking 10, 15, 20 years down the road to figure out what this next generation of people who want to play these games and be active in this community, what do they need?
Yeah. That's so impressive. I guess I didn't take into consideration the healthcare aspect of it, or like what that would mean for your mind, not only that aspect, but also physically, especially for whatever that looks like to you, how long you're doing it. Or I'm sure there's a lot of different aspects. I'm going to look into this after of like the recommendations and what that would mean to individuals who maybe play a lot and what you should be doing.
And that's, that's probably the main reason I play Dance Dance Revolution a lot.
I'm upset that I didn't know you did this.
I'm also upset I didn't know that. We could have set up a whole different setup.
We could have been doing that the whole time.
I could have moved.
We could have started with that.
Or not. Probably best that we didn't. Talk a little bit, if you would, about who's attending your conference and what they're going to expect. You've talked a little bit about it. But
so to put a little finer point on that, imagine two sides of the equation. So, of course, we need event organizers. That's our universe that are our bread and butter. In this case, these are people organizing, again, in-person esports or gaming opportunities, events. And so that ranges from some of the largest organizations in the world that are doing this on a global scale that are here in Bloomington, coming from Europe to bring their events to the United States, all the way down to more entrepreneurial efforts, people organizing more community-based gaming festivals or get your local community involved in an event that may or may not have travel. Most of it does, but a lot of it is community building through gaming. We know, this younger generation for sure will respond to that. You're seeing it, with events here at the mall. So we've got that side of the equation. And then this other side is this sort of to what a lot of people would be a silent community, if you will, of destination representatives. These are sales positions. These are people going out to events like ours, making the case for why a tournament, in this case, an esports tournament, should come to Bloomington as opposed to 20 other cities that they're going to meet with who also want to make that case for why their community is a great place to travel to, a great place to host your event. It's safe. We've got things to do. We've got other things outside the competition. That's the conversation that's taking place around the country on a daily basis. That's what our company seeks to unite and connect with, or get these event organizers, whether it's traditional sports at the highest level, the lowest level. We haven't really talked about traditional sports, but it's not just a Super Bowl and the Olympics. It's really youth sports. It's soccer tournaments with 1,000 teams. It's volleyball,
which we do here in the Twin
1,000
Cities.
teams, coming, and you start to do the math and your head hurts on how many people that would be, how many hotel room nights, how many meals in a restaurant. So, for the EsportsTravel Summit, to your question, Dan, that's what we're doing. We're finding these esports organizations, which is not terribly easy sometimes even for us to find, who has an event that can move around, and we're putting them in conversation with cities, with venues that absolutely want to host those events.
I love it. We are going to get to some of the traditional stuff in just a minute, but SJ, we have done stuff like we set a world record, the guy who made the Donkey Kong or whatever.
Kings of Kong.
Right? Something, right? And he set a world record. We've had 2 or 3 people in the rotunda.
See, we need that guy to speak this week.
I know, that would be awesome, right? And we've had a couple other events. I don't know if you want to mention them, if you know them.
Yes, not off the top of my head right now, but I know that I'm just going to go back to the world record attempt, which is so interesting that he played in the rotunda for 7 hours.
That's right. That's right. It was all day long.
That's a lot of Donkey Kong.
And I think he's the only person who's ever like beaten that game or something. It was amazing. But one thing we talked about this morning, SJ and I, as we were talking about getting ready for this, was sometimes we walk out into the mall and there are hundreds of people on their phones and they're playing Pokemon Go.
Still big.
Because all of a sudden they get a gym or two posted in the mall. And it's weird because it pops up out of nowhere, right? Yeah. But you know when it's happening because there's a little group of 20 people here and 3 people here and they're fighting each other.
Right.
Yeah.
You know they are.
You know, those Pokemons are here in the studio.
Yeah.
I know.
Yes.
I know exactly. They live here, right?
I want to scare you, but they're here also.
Yes, they are. They're with us.
But we do a lot of fun events like that. But SJ, why is it important from a marketing perspective that the mall hosts things like our friends from the E-Summit, Esports Summit, and other events like that? Why do we do it from a marketing perspective?
Yeah. Well, I think you hit it on the head in regards to community. I think community is the touch point of everything. And I think we are the hub of all things. And we love to bring people together. And I think that capitalizes on the marketing piece as well, right? Is that we can promote things, we can make something out, create something, but ultimately we want people to come together, we want people to feel good, and we want people to have fun. And I feel like that is the touch point of community plus marketing, and I think we do such a great job of bringing that full circle. I also was thinking about, as we've been talking about all the brands that are capitalizing on it, I know you mentioned like the healthcare and Mayo, which I think is so fantastic, but as I was doing research too and looking at like Nike and Red Bull and Chipotle, like all these random brands that are really leaning in and being a part of the conversation. And it just showcases how much opportunity, as we were talking about that. What does it look like in 10 years? I feel like it's only going to get bigger and better, and people get more confident participating.
Yeah, at the highest level, and even not at the highest level, those blue chip brands that you see sponsoring sporting events a lot in the retail space as well. Yeah, they're sponsoring these professional esports teams across different titles because they know the visibility. They're on a jersey patch, just like they are a traditional game, except people are online streaming these events. Yes, people travel to them, and if they can go in person, great. But of course, inherent in the nature of esports and gaming, all of this lives in the ether online to millions and millions and millions of people who are watching and see those brands on there as well. So it's no surprise that we're seeing the same thing in esports as we do in traditional sports.
Yeah, there's real value because the fans connect to it, and that's so important. We're going to wrap up in just a couple of minutes here. Before we do, I would love for you to share with us some of your websites where people can learn more about your magazine or your business, please.
I appreciate that. So SportsTravelMagazine.com is our day-to-day content driver. We've got 2 editors who pump out stories on this industry, even if you're not in the industry. If you're a sports fan, it will give you an entirely new insight into what goes into the business of sports events. So sportstravelmagazine.com. Our Esports Travel Summit is easy enough, esportstravelsummit.com. And then we've talked about our Teams Conference. This is the show we do in traditional sports, and that's over 1,000 people coming together through the Olympic movement, through youth sports, through professional sports. Collegiate is, of course, enormous. And at teamsconference.com and teamseurope.com, because we are now doing this overseas as well, where all of this business is taking place. And with the Olympics coming in 28, with the FIFA World Cup coming next year, the U.S. profile is raising over these next 10 years. We talk about this sort of golden decade capped at the tail end with Salt Lake City getting another Olympic Games, the Rugby World Cup, all the biggest sports events in the world are coming to the U.S. in the next 10 years. And there are organizations in Europe and around the world now that they want to come here. They want to come to Bloomington. They want to come to markets that you wouldn't necessarily think would be top of mind because they just don't know what's out here. And there's so many great communities like yours that they can be bringing their events to.
And we want to welcome them to Bloomington and to Mall of America. Everyone, come. We'd love that. We are going to close with a really quick quiz, and it's just a few quick questions. These are not necessarily esports related. They're just kind of sports related. So we're going to start with SJ first and then Jason, if that's all right.
Nervous.
Thank goodness.
So take the pressure off. We're going to take the pressure off our guests a little bit. The best city to host an Olympic watch party? Just top of your head.
Minneapolis.
Of course.
Yeah.
Colorado Springs, the Olympic city.
I like that very much. Ideal city for a winter esports tournament?
Austin, Texas.
Okay.
Ooh, winter esports.
I know. I was thinking warmth at the opposite.
Somewhere hot. I know Phoenix.
Yeah, Phoenix.
I'm going with Bloomington, Minnesota, in Mall of America, where it's always 70 degrees and sunny.
We set you up there on
Just saying that. Most underrated sports destination in the United States.
Oh my gosh, my mind went straight to the south. Can I come back to me?
Yes.
One city that would surprise a lot of people, Louisville, Kentucky. They're way more than the Kentucky Derby.
Okay.
They do a ton of sports events.
I didn't know that.
I'm going to go with Miami. They now host F1 and a variety of other things, and I honestly never thought of it as a city for that.
I love it. We're going to take the pressure off of SJ for a minute. We're going to start over here. City you would pick for a dodgeball world championship.
Dodgeball World Championships, Fargo, North Dakota.
Ooh, that sounds fitting, actually.
My first thought was LA, but I like Fargo better.
I would go with Fargo. I like it. Perfect place to host a sports meets pop culture summit. You can't say Mall of America. Sorry, I just took it away from you.
I'm going to go with American Dream.
Oh, okay. I
I'm
like
going to give
it.
a sister property.
Perfect city we're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
That's okay.
New Jersey.
No, that's okay. Los Angeles, California. That's
There's a lot of pop culture there. Most scenic location for a marathon or an endurance race?
This is a little random flex,
Yep.
but I got to go to Athens, Greece last year for a business conference. I know the tough work of the sports division, and it was around the Athens Marathon, which ends in the original Olympic Stadium, and I have yet to see anything more stunning than that.
Wow.
I don't even know if I should answer.
I think
we
so.
leave it at that.
I think we all go with Athens,
That's amazing.
right?
You can understand when I answered that call years ago about Sports
The answer
Travel
was
magazine.
yes.
I was like, absolutely.
I'll do this.
Wherever the things are, I'll be there.
Let's just do two more. Best food scene to pair with a sporting event.
Food scene to pair.
What type of food with a sporting event? You can mention a sporting event if you want.
Yeah.
For me, it's always kind of Southwest, Mexican.
I was going to go with Mexican as well.
Is that wrong?
No.
Pizza goes with
Pizza
everything.
is never
everything.
wrong.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I lean barbecue. I like the notion of some sort of smoked meat going on in the
that's
tailgating
smart.
situation, and anywhere. Where that's
Yeah, that works anywhere.
Now I'm hungry.
Yeah, no.
I was like, that sounds good. Maybe I'll get that for lunch. I'm going to go with Mexican as well. As you were saying that, I was like, Southwest sounds good.
It does, doesn't it?
First thought that popped in.
I think we're going to lunch together
We sure
today.
are.
We're just going to
Yeah.
lunch. Final question really quickly, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but
Okay.
feel free to give it a shot if you want to.
Okay.
A city that surprised you the most as a host destination?
Oh, my goodness. Dan, you ask a tough one because we get
And
to go to
I'm not asking you to play
lots
favorites,
of
just something that
events.
surprised you that, wow, this was awesome.
Let's see. I will go. Last year I was at of all things, a breakdancing competition in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Breakdancing was, in the Olympics in
Yes.
Paris. It was a one and done.
Yep.
It was interesting. But those are the types of sporting events, in our magazine. Yes, we care about soccer and football and baseball and all of that. But sometimes you end up in Kane's historic ballroom, a 100-year-old country western bar in Tulsa, where they were doing a breakdancing competition. I had the chance to be there last year, and it was amazing.
Where barbecue would go great with.
Yes, maybe that's why I had it on the
see where
brain.
the connection
right?
went.
In Tulsa,
Yeah.
I did have some great barbecue.
I'm going to not add, you need to have an answer or no?
I don't. I support that answer.
That's right. I support that as well. We're going to wrap this up. Jason, thank you so much. Welcome to Bloomington and welcome to Mall of America. So good to have you here. Thank you for joining us for the podcast.
Thanks for having me here. This was just terrific. We love Bloomington. As I said, we've been doing events here for years ourselves. And with this particular event, our EsportsTravel Summit, as I said at the beginning, it's actually the perfect location for us for a destination that's really leaned into everything that they have. So thanks for having me. Love being here in Bloomington. Love being at the mall.
Well, we appreciate it. SJ, thanks for joining me as well. You're always awesome on the show.
Thank you.
And for all of our listeners and watchers, thanks for tuning in to this episode of So Much More. We're excited to have you with us. Please follow us and like us and tell everyone about us. And we will put the links to all of Jason's different websites down in the description so you can all link to that as well. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to So Much More, a Mall of America podcast. Subscribe wherever you find your favorite podcasts. This show is presented by Bloomington, Minnesota Travel and Tourism.